Welcome to National Garden Bureau's webinar about why grow new varieties. I know a lot of times you may see new varieties out there and you're like, well, what's the difference? We're going to tell you what the difference is today. So National Garden Bureau is hosting this webinar. I will introduce our panelists and then I'll turn it back over to them so that they can do a little introduction themselves. So we have Laura Robles from Walters Gardens. We have Marcus Jansen from Pan American Seed. We have Mitchell Young from American Taki. We have Stephanie Whitehouse from Doom and Orange. And we have Jason Riley from Cicada. So let's go back in that order. And Laura, tell us about yourself and your company and what you produce and breed.
So Walters Gardens is located in West Michigan, and we started out back in the 1940s as a perennial bare root supplier. We've expanded since then, so we still supply bare root, but also young plant liners to growers in greenhouses throughout the country and Canada. And then we also partnered with Proven Winners back about 12 years ago or so. So we do our own breeding here at Walters, and some of the varieties that we breed go into the Proven Winners program. So the perennials that you buy in the white Proven Winners container primarily originated here at Walters, but then we also have other items beyond that as well. And I am a product manager for the Northeast for Walters.
Thank you. And Marcus.
Hello and good morning. Marcus Jansen coming to you from Pan American Seed. We are one of the companies within Ball Horticultural Company, and we are in the business of breeding new varieties and producing seed and distributing that seed all around the world of garden varieties for annuals, perennials, vegetables and herbs, cut flowers, and potted plants alike. Today, we're going to be focusing mostly on annuals from seed. I am a product manager and am based at our site here in Elburn, Illinois. That's Western Chicago suburbs. I live, work, and garden here in Zone 5B. So it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. Okay, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. Stephanie Whitehouse here from Doom and Orange. We are a major global breeding company. We're based in the Netherlands and Germany, but our North American offices are based in Columbus, Ohio. We breed normally or mostly annuals, but we also dabble in perennials as well as roses, cut flowers, and small tropical plants like calendula, pot mums, and garden mums. So a whole huge long catalog of a lot of different products that we offer on a global scale. I am a product manager for decorative annuals. So that's a lot of the annuals that you're going to see here in the springtime at your local garden center. And so today I'm going to be talking about annuals primarily, but those that are come from vegetative cuttings rather than seed like Marcus. I'm based in the center of New York State in Syracuse, New York. And I am gardening in zone, I think it's a 5B as well now, although it keeps changing. And yeah, I love National Garden Bureau and All American Selection. So happy to be here today.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mitchell, welcome.
Morning, everyone. I'm Mitchell Young from American Taki, and American Taki is a global company. It is still family owned since 1835. We are a breeder and producer of vegetable and flower seeds. The U.S. office is in Salinas, California. I am based in New Hampshire. I happen to be the national vegetable sales manager, so that's my expertise. And lots of new and good stuff coming.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jason.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I work for Cicada Seed. We're one of the largest vegetable and ornamental breeding companies in the world. We've been around for over 100 years. Quick little fun fact about Cicada. We are very well known for our broccoli. If you go to the grocery store, I don't care where you are in North America, you go to the grocery store or a farmer's market and you pick up a head of broccoli, there's 75% chance that that's a cicada bred variety. We're very well known for broccoli, among other things. So again, we're an ornamental and vegetable breeding company. I specifically work on the vegetable side. I work for a division of Cicada called Cicada Homegrown, where I focus on the home gardener. where the outlets through which I sell seed eventually make it into your hands, whether that's mail order, packet seed racks, that type of stuff. So that's what I do. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I work out of my home here and happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. And look at the expertise we have. It's very impressive. So when I start with my questions, this is going to be very fun to hear what everybody has to share. And I like to start these webinars off by asking a question like, you're with friends and family or you're with somebody that doesn't know you very well, and you're talking about what you do for a living, and they probably are like, well, what's it mean having a new variety? So what are some of the questions you guys get instead of just what's a new variety? And we're going to dive into a lot of more of these later, but what's one of the most frequently asked questions you get, and how do you answer it? So anybody can go in any order. You don't have to stay in the order that we introduced you or alphabetical. We can go willy-nilly here.
For me, if I meet someone new and they don't know what I do, and one of the general questions is, hey, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And my usual general answer is, well, I do sales and marketing for a vegetable breeding company. And most people, whenever I say that, they kind of get a look on their face like, I have no idea what that means, So you have to explain a little bit more. And so if we do get into a little bit more details, one of the questions I get mostly asked is it an early variety? It's from the vegetable side, people want something, the home gardener wants something early.
Okay, great. Who else?
I feel like
go ahead, Marcus.
When the question I get the most with new varieties is where can I get it and when can I get it? So as a seed company in the industry, or even with home gardeners, we often get asked, when is the seed available? Because it's pretty easy for folks to get excited about new varieties, but they want to know, when realistically can I actually have this in my garden? So that's the question I usually get, is when can I get it and where can I get it? Which that gets a little complicated as well, because our varieties go in lots of different supply chains, whether it's through your local garden center or your favorite online seed catalog or packet seed supplier. So I can maybe steer you in the right direction, but can't always exactly tell you where you may or may not find our new varieties.
Well, I can tell you a really good place to start, and that's the NGB website, ngb.org. Go on new plants. That's where you'll find it, or go to shop our members. Sorry, you just queued that one up for me. Perfect, Marcus. So that's great. Okay, Mitchell, you were going to pop in there too.
Yeah, most of the people, the circles I run in is generally agriculture, so that's easy. But the general public or friends and family, mostly I run into the fact they can't even conceive that, oh, what, vegetable seed is bred? You have to breed new varieties? Where does this, they never make that jump to actually how the seed and the variety of vegetable gets produced. So the whole conversation revolves around that before you get to anything else.
That's good. And that's kind of where we want today to revolve to too. So let's hear it. Laura and Stephanie, what about you guys when you're chatting with new acquaintances?
So I definitely hear all of the above questions that that were already mentioned. I'd say another question that I get asked sometimes is how do you even do that? How do you create new varieties? And without getting into a super lengthy conversation with them, I try to just, talk a little bit about some we breed and then some we find as sport mutations.
Excellent. And Stephanie, you're going to be the last word on this one before we go to my questions.
I would also agree that all of those same questions that everyone has shared is a commonality or a common thread, ones that I've been asked as well too. But also because my company is globally based, I get a lot of questions about, ooh, so you get to travel a lot. Do you go to the Netherlands or do you go to Germany or like where else do you go? And yes, as product managers, we have to travel a lot to go see our plants in trials at different places around the globe, or to meet up with our breeders and to take a look at the different plants that are coming up in the pipeline. It's not always as glamorous as it sounds, because a lot of the times it's either very long days out in the field or very long days in a greenhouse where you're trying to discern the difference between what makes one red petunia really great from the other 12 red petunias that you just saw. So I love it. It's a great job that is like the mix between the science of horticulture and the art and creativity of bringing something to market. And yes, the travel can be fun sometimes. You got to leave a little bit of room for fun in there too. But it is not like gallivanting and jet setting around the world, like my girlfriends all believe.
It's like those memes they used to have, on social media, what my parents think I do and what I actually do. So yeah, I get it. So just for everybody's information, we do have some new varieties to show you. Each panelist has 3 new varieties they're going to talk about, but I wanted to do some kind of high level questions first. And I think one of the most basic is, what does new mean? So if you see that sign saying that it's new, what can you interpret from that?
So I'll jump in on this one. For us at Walters, we try to have anything that we introduce as new, being something that's actually a true improvement over anything that's out on the market. So we're not trying to just add, a different color of something. We're trying to bring forth either something that is going to be longer blooming, or have a better habit for the home garden, or be more disease resistant, things like that, that actually make it a true improvement. The only other thing that we would do that would be new would be like if we start working with plant types that aren't commonly seen in the trade so far.
Excellent. Who else wants to jump in there?
I'll jump in a little bit. New is a little bit in the eye of the beholder too. As there are varieties that Taki has had for a while, but since we sell through dealers, from time to time the dealer just will recently pick it up, and for them it's new. But a new variety is just that, a new variety. There's an improvement, there's a change, there's a tweak. It's a new hybrid, occasionally new OP, but mostly a new hybrid with different traits that the consumer is asking for or needs.
And
Yeah, I
go
think
ahead.
I'm sorry. I think if you render it all down, I mean, to the gardening public out there watching, I mean, new variety doesn't necessarily, like Mitch said, doesn't necessarily mean it's new for us this year, but rendered down, it could have been something 10 years ago that was introduced, and if it's the first time you're growing it, it's new for you. So yeah, I mean, for the home gardener, you've never tried it before, it's new.
And what I was going to suggest is, we've heard the word improvement twice. So can somebody define improvement? Like if you have a line or a series of X, celosia, whatever it might be, and then there's an improvement. What does that mean typically?
Well,
Yeah,
typically,
go ahead, Mitch. Go ahead, Mitch.
okay. On the vegetable side, I'll stay with that. That's where my expertise is. It will be something that has better disease resistance, or better drought tolerance, or earlier, or better feed holding. It has a trait that is different from and or better than its predecessors. As broad a brush as I can paint that.
Yeah, and then another thing I'll add to your list there, Mitch, is especially for the home gardener, an improvement could be flavor on something.
Absolutely.
Especially with tomatoes. Tomatoes are the largest vegetable crop grown by home gardeners, and so yeah, it could even be flavor, which is very important.
I'll chime in on improvement from the ornamental side. Improvements can come in lots of different ways. Better, stronger color, longer flowering, earlier to flower for some crops, later to flower for other crops like coleus or basil. We can have better habit. We can have better garden performance, more uniformity amongst the series. There's lots of ways we can improve varieties to be a better standalone or be better within the series that it represents. Sometimes we call out those improvements because we want to make them very obvious. And sometimes we'll do what we call a silent upgrade, where we improve that variety and we don't even talk about it. You just get to reap those benefits as the end consumer.
And I think it's important to note too that, like, if there's an improvement that comes out on the marketplace, it's not that that original variety is necessarily bad, or that maybe we as breeding companies didn't do our job right? Like, it served its purpose. And sometimes you introduce something early because you want to be first to market on a cool new dahlia or a really tasty new tomato, but that that there's some tweaks, that it has, some things that might need some improvements down the line. But sometimes that speed to market process is kind of overrules sometimes checking off all the boxes that we're looking for in what makes a great variety.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I also wanted to kind of say that, at retail, you may not see the word improvement. We in the industry know of improvements and what they are, but when you see them at retail, it may just say new. And so it could have been something that was out a couple years ago, and now there's something new. Speaking of improvements, and I think pretty much everybody can address this, let's talk about some disease tolerance that you're breeding for and what happens with these races of diseases. I know when I spoke about this to a consumer group a couple weeks ago, they were all like, wow, and I equate it back to a recent occurrence is COVID. It morphed and it mutated and it's something new. So the vaccinations had to change. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about that? I know you put a lot of work in breeding for disease tolerance and how you have to react to each new strain that comes along.
Yeah, I'll chime in right off the bat. Yeah, from the vegetable side, breeding for disease resistance is obviously very important for the home gardener. One, we'll take spinach for example, and for those of you listening out there, spinach is very susceptible to downy mildew. Now, when we say downy mildew, you think that okay, it's one strain of downy mildew. Well, those of us who are breeding for resistances, we know that there are 20 races now, different races of downy mildew. And a spinach that you've just bred may be resistant to races 1, 5, 7, 9, and 15, but all the other races it's susceptible to. So we have to breed for resistances in, say, spinach to all those races of downy mildew. Okay, and so we may breed a variety that is now resistant to all 20 races, but then you're just kicking the can down the road because a new race is developed, mutates, if you will. So now there's 21 races of downy mildew, and now you have to breed for that resistance. So it's hard to explain, but yeah, it's breeding for disease resistance is, yes, intense.
And a priority, and it's a priority for vegetables, it's a priority for ornamentals, and it's one of the things that I say time and time again. It's like, trust the breeders. If they're breeding for these resistances, don't insist on buying a variety from 20 or 30 years ago that you just loved because there's something better now. That's why breeders are doing all this work on improving. So does anybody on the ornamental side want to talk about similar topic and what you're doing?
I'm glad Jason brought up downy mildew because we put a lot of work into downy mildew specifically on impatiens. And impatiens downy mildew is actually a completely different species. We're talking about Plasmoptera destructor, which has its own different host of strains and fun things like that. So we launched Beacon Impatiens a handful of years ago, which brings resistance into impatiens Walleriana, your typical garden impatient. So it was first get that resistance in there. Now let's fill out that color range and the expectations that folks in the industry and in home gardens that they have for impatiens Walleriana. So it's getting out there, getting ahead of it, collecting as many strains as you can from different sources, getting that resistance integrated, and then getting ready for new strains that might come or the power that a pathogen like that has. So,
yeah, Marcus, I'll tack onto that how important it is for downy mildew resistance and impatiens. For those of you listening out there, impatiens Walleriana, which are your typical impatiens that you plant in your garden or in containers, was one of the major crops for many, many decades. And downy mildew became a major issue for impatiens. And the market for it just went way down because home gardeners just weren't having luck with it. So that's now Pan American brought on the Beacon several years ago, which brought that helped bring that impatiens market back to what it is now. So that's how important, breeding for resistances is by the breeding companies.
And not only bringing a series like Beacon to market, but also the importance of dropping our susceptible series. We had Elfin and Super Elfin in patience for many, many years of legacy brand. And folks were upset when we dropped Super Elfin because has name recognition and folks have been gardening with it for years. But that's just a responsible choice. The fact that our growers don't have to deal with the susceptible impatiens, that our farms where we produce seed aren't dealing with downy mildew, and that all of you gardening at home, it's just a better option to have varieties with disease resistance.
And that reiterates what I was saying earlier is, don't get all hung up on growing something from 20 years ago because there's a really good reason it's no longer on the market. There's something that performs that was there, or there's a really good reason why the breeders have removed it from the market. So did anybody else have anything to say? Because what I want to do is I want to start showing some of these new varieties and hearing some of the specifics. So let's see here. I'm pretty sure we went alphabetically. So Mitchell, you will be the first one, and you can start talking about your 3 varieties and what some of the new improvements or what it is about these new varieties that make them such good choices.
Very good. We'll start with Green Prime, which is a cabbage. And this is an oblate. It's a flat cabbage, which a lot of people don't see, but this is very typical in Europe or Japan, being flat. They typically have tender leaves and very good eating quality compared to a storage cabbage, which will store like iron and chew like cardboard. In this particular case, Green Prime has very high resistance to black rot and clubroot. And for those that don't know, black rot is a bacterial disease which is generally spread either through the air or by animals traversing your field or your garden. And it is very hard to control once it's in. If the conditions are right, that can eat up a head pretty quickly. This one has very high tolerance to it. And also clubroot, which is a soil-borne disease. And once that gets into the soil, it will be there for 50 years. It will host on susceptible plants and wild hosts. So again, that's one of the things we bred for, is to try to improve disease resistance, in this case, in a couple of bad ones. So
very admirable. Thank you.
Next up, we have Happy Dance, which is a cucumber. It's an Asian type. And part of the breeding was, this one is uniformity, attractive, great flavor, crisp texture. All those things people like when they bite into a cucumber. In this case, is powdery mildew and downy mildew resistant. And a lot of cucumber varieties are very susceptible, and that can eat up a plant in a hurry. And then the last one we have is a collard, cash crop, which looks a lot like a typical collard. It has great eating quality and just fits the market of what somebody's looking for in a collard. And we don't typically think of collard as a home garden type plant, but like a cabbage, you harvest a cabbage, it's done. The collard, a plant or two, can yield a lot of leaves and can supply a family through the summer because you can harvest and strip the leaves and let it regrow. This one has a very high regrowth rate, great flavor, great texture. One of the things that this one is great with is very high bolting tolerance. It does not want to go to seed. Makes it a challenge for seed production. But I don't recommend this. I've harvested this in the snow in November. I'm not recommending you try it, but I've gotten away with it. So
thank you. Thank you. Okay, and now we're going to go to Stephanie with Duman. And of course, I had to put an AAS winner in there.
Yes. So Geranium Big EEZE Pink Batik. It's part of our Big EEZE series, this geranium, and the name says it all. Big, meaning that you get those big oversized flowers or umbels, and easy, meaning it's not only easy to grow for our greenhouse growers, but it's easy at home for you as well too. Pink Batik, when we saw this variety, it was super unique with its kind of mosaic or striping coloration on the flowers. And with its really nice uniform habit, we thought that this variety was going to be an instant winner, not only with gardening consumers because of the color pattern, but also its habit lended itself really nicely for growing in large size containers. And last year, we submitted it into the All American Selections contest for container gardens, and it won. So if you're looking for a geranium that's going to do really well through spring season and continue blooming and really thrive in the heat and humidity of the summertime, geranium or Big EEZE Pink Batik is a great option. We'll go on to another geranium called Geranium. It's from our Glory Days series that has two different varieties in that series. And this one is red orange bicolor. This is new for this year. So you're going to start seeing this variety at your garden centers, both box store garden centers as well as locally owned ones. And Glory Days is a series of really kind of fun two different geraniums. They're both bicolor. This one, the red orange, has kind of an orangey undertone with a really nice dark red color on top. There's also a pink bicolor with a light and a dark two-toned color pattern to it. But we loved these and called them Glory Days because it's going back to the old-fashioned type geraniums, that single flower, that nice kind of like ivy-looking habit, which makes them really great for using in hanging baskets or even planting in the landscape because they'll trail nicely. But they have that great disease resistance and summer garden performance that we would expect from our zonal geraniums. So kind of the best of both worlds came out of this breeding. And we're really just the color pattern is super striking and unique with Glory Days red orange bicolor. And then lastly, Summer Bees Dahlias are a brand new series out on the marketplace this year. You can find them as a first year exclusive as part of our Better Homes and Gardens program. It was a partnership with Better Homes and Gardens and with Walmart. So that's where you'll find it this spring and this summer. There's two colors here, and it was bred to be a late spring, summer blooming dahlia. There's two colors with the red bicolor and then the purple bicolor. It's great oversized blooms here, nice single flower. Pollinators, especially if you're really a big fan of creating pollinator gardens or having those pollinator type habitats in your back or front yard, the summer bees are an excellent choice. The flowers are really oversized. They get to be the size of maybe like 2 or 3 inches in diameter. They pair really nicely with Calibrachoa as well, or million bells if you love those. So we're really happy with both the container performance as well as the garden performance on our summer bees, new exclusively through Better Homes and Gardens for this spring.
Thank you. And Marcus, looks like you're up next.
Yeah, so we'll start here with a brand new series. Sometimes we work in brand new genera or groups of plants. Sometimes it's just new varieties added to existing series, but we are excited to bring a full brand new series with Dart. It came with 5 colors. What you're seeing is Dart Pink Magician. Magician meaning that you're seeing that range, that ombre of colors from white to blush all the way to pink. But this was a series bred as an improvement from another series we had called Dash. And Dash was also a Dianthus barbados. These are Dianthus that are meant for cooler seasons, either the spring or the fall. And Dash was quite a bit taller. So the beauty of Dart is that it brings that height a little bit down to a more controlled size, just easier handling for you as the home gardener. And then also it's a bit earlier to flower. So if you're either a grower, if you're starting these from seed from home, you can get them into flower quicker than with some of our other Dianthus barbados. So cool season, it pairs really well with pansies, violas, snapdragons, osteospermum. I think we have so few options for annuals in the cool season that I'm glad we can bring more options. For here in Chicago, we have a bit smaller cool season, but I know for some of you in the South, Dianthus becomes important all the way through the winter. So if you haven't seen it yet, give Dianthus Dart a check. We got more breeding coming in that one as well. On to Wave. That's probably our most recognized brand at Pan American Seed. We're celebrating 30 years of Wave this year. And this past Saturday was actually the first ever inaugural National Wave Day. So we now have May 3rd will be a national holiday. But we're looking at some new varieties. There's 5 series within the family of wave petunias. You've got classic wave, which is flat and prostrate. Tidal wave's quite vigorous. EEZE wave is our mainstay series. E3 is more domed, and then shock wave has smaller flowers. So what we're looking at here is Petunia E3, EEZE wave rose morn. E3 stands for early, efficient, and evolution. So all the E3 EEZE wave petunias flower within 10-hour day length, so you can get them into flower quicker, and they have a dome habit as opposed to a really arching and spreading habit that we get with EEZE wave. This is one of the newest series to the family of wave products, and Rose Morn has that rose color, and we use the word morn in the industry when you have white in the center. So you get that bicolor. That is the first patterned or bicolor variety in E3 EEZE wave. But that just gives you an idea of when we bring in new varieties. We launched Classic Wave Purple many, many years ago, and we still sell that today. But we've come a really long way in breeding and still developing over 30 years wave petunias. So that's that one. On to EEZE wave. So again, this is a little more spreading than those E3s. And this is navy velour. It brings that black or dark navy velvety color. We use velour when we have that velvety finish on the petunias. You see it here in that basket with Dichondra Silver Falls. It just brings that moody color. I know goth gardens are in right now. Black plants are interesting and fascinating. So happy to bring that. I know there's other black petunias on the market, but now we've got an option here in a spreading petunia with EEZE wave.
Great, thank you. And now Jason.
All right. So broccoli purple magic, as I said, Cicada is a worldwide leader in broccoli breeding. 2 years ago, or was it last year, Diane? We won and we submitted this to AAS, and yeah, I guess it was last year it won an AAS award. So what that means for you, the home gardeners out there, that it has been tested nationwide and throughout Canada also at many judging sites, and it is rated and scored, and it performed well all over North America. So what that means for all of you gardeners out there, there's a very, very, very good chance that should you try this variety, it's going to perform for you also. So as you can see, it is a purple variety of broccoli. It is the first purple heading variety on the market. It is very high in anthocyanins. As you can, anthocyanins is the blue coloration that gives flowers and vegetables that bluish tint. So it's very high in anthocyanins, and so what that means, it's very healthy. You know, they say, you know, you could eat broccoli is very good at supplying anthocyanins. So your traditional green broccoli, yeah, to get a lot of anthocyanins, we'd almost have to eat a bushel basket. But with Purple Magic, because it's so high in anthocyanins, just have a head of broccoli of Purple Magic, and you get a ton of anthocyanins. Again, like I said, it's very adaptable throughout the country, and it is about 90 days to maturity from transplant. So butternut squash. A lot of gardeners, especially in the north, have a little bit of difficulty with butternut squashes, and that is because their season isn't long enough to finally produce a butternut. Many of your butternuts that are out there now, they require as much as 110, 120 days to maturity from direct seeding. And if you're in a northern climate, an especially cold climate, you don't have 110, 120 days worth of warm weather to get a mature fruit. So with Ceres, when we introduced this one a couple years ago, it has earlier maturity. We're at about 90 to 95 days from direct seed on this. So now most all of North America can successfully produce a butternut squash in time before the frost hits. It's very smooth skinned. It's got a dark orange interior. It's your typical butternut flavor. Yeah, it's a great variety. Now, I will say this also, it's quite vigorous. It's a vining type, so you're gonna have to give it some space in your garden. So yeah, that's squash series. Rubee Prize. So in our Rubee series, we have 4 varieties. You're looking at Rubee Prize, Rubee Dawn, Rubee Goddess, and Rubee Plus, or the other ones. The breeding directive behind all 4 of those was we wanted an indeterminate tomato that was very high in flavor and it was very disease resistant. So that was our breeding focus for that series. And Rubee Prize, being part of that series, has those qualities. It's very good eating, very good tasting, excellent disease package. It's medium to large fruited. So you'll get 10, 12-ounce fruits that will continuously set through the summertime. Again, that disease resistance package that it has is going to allow for continuous fruit setting and harvesting for you guys out there. And it's mid-maturity, so about 75 to 70 to 75 days from transplant. But yeah, Rubee Prize, very good variety.
Thanks, Jason. And now we go to Laura.
Okay, so a little bit different world with perennials, but these are all new varieties that we just introduced for this current season. So these are all essentially first time at retail is this spring. So the first one here is Coreopsis Golden Needles. This is part of a larger series of 4 colors that are called the Designer Threads series, and that's because these are threadleaf Coreopsis or Coreopsis verticillata. And within this series, what we were looking for was a couple of main things as we were breeding this and developing this. Coreopsis verticillata can be prone to mildew. So one of the things was disease resistance. And then another thing was to have nice large flowers that don't have too much of a gap between the petals. On some plants, you'll see a much larger gap in between petals. And it just makes for a nicer coverage, a nicer appearance, more color if you don't have that gappiness. So this entire series is comprised of 4 colors that has good mildew resistance, nice growing habit. They grow well for our nursery growers who are growing them into larger containers for home consumers to buy. And then also the nice large, very full formed flowers. Next is a new hibiscus called Cookies and Cream. We are very excited about this variety. So our hibiscus program in general, we have several key breeding criteria in all of the varieties that we're developing. So hibiscus, if you go back, 20 years or so and think about what you would have seen at retail garden centers then, they tended to be very tall, kind of lanky, maybe a few flowers up at the very top, but not a mass of flowers. And we have taken those and bred them down into a much more compact habit. So our early varieties in our hibiscus were like 5 or 6 feet tall, 5 or 6 feet wide. So definitely more manageable, much fuller habit. We call them a gumdrop shape habit. And then flower coverage from top to bottom. And then with our more recent varieties, including Cookies and Cream, we have developed an even more compact habit, which we think is really important because not everybody has room in their garden for a 5 to 6 foot wide perennial. So Cookies and Cream is one that maxes out at about 3 foot to 3.5 feet tall and wide, so it's much more user-friendly for the small garden space. Or for big gardens, it's great because you can bring it a little bit more into the middle of the border and not, have to have it way at the back like your taller hibiscus would be. And then what's really cool about this variety is we actually had people asking us about 6 or 7 years ago if we couldn't breed a pure white flowered hardy hibiscus. So these are all hardy, hardy down to zone 4. So people throughout much of North America can utilize this in their garden. But the older varieties of pure white flowered hibiscus without the red eye in the middle just really didn't have a good habit. And so our breeding team worked really hard on developing that pure white flower on a nice habit plant. And we actually introduced 2. We have another one that came out a year ago that was called Marshmallow Moon, and it was white flowers on a green leaf plant. And then Cookies and Cream is the white flowers on the dark purple, almost black leaf. And then last one I have to share with you is a new variety of Stokesia. So this is Stokes Aster. And this is in the Totally Stoked series. We have a lot of fun with our names sometimes. So we have 2 different colors. The Riptide is the bluish purple that you see here. And then we also have one called White Caps that is a white with just a little bit of a blush pink to it. Stokes Aster is a fantastic perennial. It's not super well known. It's kind of a little bit more of an heirloom type perennial. But it's a really great plant for heat and humidity tolerance. And we actually developed this in conjunction with some folks at North Carolina State University. And so really focused on making selections that were just very extremely good in that heat and humidity. So they're great up here in Michigan and the, upper Midwest, but they also perform very well in more southern and hotter, humid parts of the country too. And then compared to a lot of the other Stokes asters that you might find on the market, the flower power or floriferousness of these two varieties is just really fantastic. So a lot more color, and just even improved heat and humidity tolerance compared to other varieties of the Stokesia.
So Laura, thank you, because I know you mentioned a couple key things. When you're breeding perennials, what are some of the top things that you're breeding for and why? So while you do that, I'm going to take the screen off so we can see all of our panelists because we're finished with our slides. But if you can talk about that, Laura.
Yeah. So I think some of them are similar things to what a bunch of us have mentioned. Definitely disease resistance is key for a lot of things. Certain things are prone to various diseases, just as, people mentioned in annuals and vegetables, the same thing goes for perennials. So tall garden phlox is a prime example because they tend to be very likely to get mildew. And you might have this beautiful flower, but then the foliage becomes covered with this fuzzy white mildew later in the summer, and that's not pretty. Nobody wants that in their garden. So resistance to these various diseases is a big thing. Habit has been mentioned, including on the hibiscus, having a better habit, one that is more flowers throughout the whole habit of the plant. Sometimes we breed things down in size so that they fit better. We've done that with the hibiscus. We've done that with other plants like Baptisia, to just make a smaller, more user-friendly size plant. But then sometimes we also breed things back up in size because, for an example, our Agastache that we released within the last few years, we actually bred those to be taller in garden height because we felt like there had been a trend in the market of breeding everything down to be more compact. And especially in a perennial garden setting, you don't want everything to be the same size. You want some staggered height in your garden. And so it's important not to lose that. So keeping those things in mind, definitely length of bloom is always something that we look at. So, if there's something that blooms for, 2 or 3 weeks and we can extend that through our breeding work to bloom for, 5 or 6 weeks or more, that's going to be a win for not only the folks trying to sell it at retail because it will be in flower longer on their benches, but then for, the consumers who are buying those plants and putting them in their garden, they're going to have a longer season of color in their garden as well. There's just a whole slew of things: heat and humidity tolerance, cold tolerance, resistance to heavy soils. There's so many things that you can look at. But those are some of the kind of key ones that we look at.
And I will add that longer bloom time is better for our pollinator friends also. So give me
Yes.
6 weeks instead of 3 weeks is wonderful.
Yes.
So you talked about size, and I think I'd like to hear from anybody else on the panel too. Why are you breeding compactness? If I'm a home gardener and I'm having a shrinking lot, which is happening, especially in suburbia now, why do I want a more compact plant?
I guess I can say from an annual standpoint that sometimes neat and tidy is really helpful, especially if we're looking for things that we want to extend that bloom season on, and we want to have that plant survive and thrive at the home gardener for a much longer period of time. Looking for compactness or even just downsizing a variety or a series a bit more is helpful so that you don't end up with a weedy mess at the end of the season. It helps with, not having to do extra maintenance or care, both at the greenhouse level as well as at home. So sometimes looking for varieties that are a little bit smaller and compact doesn't always have to mean tiny or 4-inch in size and that it'll never grow beyond that size. Sometimes compact just means that it's smaller than what its original cousin would be, and that you could still grow and thrive in a garden space later on in the season. But to start off, it's going to be nice and controllable for the grower as well as for you at home.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add? If not, I've got a question over here.
I'll just add
Yeah, go ahead.
from the vegetable side. Yeah, if we're breeding compactness into something. Many home gardeners, many of you listening out there may not have a large garden space, so a more compact broccoli or a very determinate tomato, you can plant more plants. So yeah, it's as simple as that.
Or if I can just kick in there, even a lot of people have container gardens on their patio. You know, we have a couple of nice compact bell peppers. Commercially, they're not anywhere big enough, but for container garden, they're beautiful.
Yeah, in fact, I think Stephanie was mentioning container for the AES winter, but even for vegetables, we trial vegetables in ground and or in containers, as well as, you know, any of our ornamentals from seed or vegetative cuttings, because yes, container patio containers, they're here to stay. And so we want to test and trial for that. So the question I have, are you sacrificing yield when you breed for compactness? So that would be a vegetable question.
Not necessarily. There are some varieties out there that are fairly compact plant stature that do produce a lot of, well, in the case of fruiting crops, a lot of fruit, whether it's peppers or tomatoes, and they work pretty hard to produce a high quality, high volume of fruit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there does come a point where if you're breeding something that we breed something that is very compact, like a micro dwarf tomato, like the red robin or yellow canary, sure, now you're getting such a compact plant that yes, overall you're going to get less yields. But for the most part, no, we're not sacrificing that. I'll use, there's a tomato variety out there called Rubee Crush, which is a determinate grape tomato. So it's a relatively compact plant, but it is one of the most high yielding tomatoes I've ever seen. So, and it tastes very good too.
And that's something I always say about the AS entries is yield is very high in the traits that breeders are working on, because if you're going to take up this space and put all the time in it, you want the yield to be higher. And so I would say that that's a high priority. Another question, I think this is really just terminology. What's the difference between a new plant and a new cultivar?
I, I guess I'll go. So, a new cultivar could be a new plant, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and a new plant to the home gardener is just that, something they've never tried before. So then that kind of begs the question, well, what is a cultivar? So a cultivar is, okay, you have your genus and species of, let's say, a squash type. So it would be Cucurbita pepo. Okay, so that's a genus and species. So it could be crossed with another Cucurbita pepo that develops and improve a new variety, a new plant, mother father cross, and it produces a new plant with the seed. Um, and now that can be named. So it could be Cucurbita pepo thriller that you would see at the garden center with the thriller, and so it's a named. That's a kind of essentially rendered down what a cultivar is.
I'll also chime in here as well. It might be a good opportunity to talk about that there are interspecific and intergeneric crosses that are created, right? We can have cultivars or cultivated varieties within the species, but the industry has done a lot of work in finding the value of multiple species within a genus and bringing those together in something that brings us even more value. Interspecific salvias, interspecific impatiens. We can get the best of worlds with multiple species. So the industry has done quite a bit of that. Or intergeneric, the industry created Petcoa, bringing the value of Petunia and Calibrachoa together in something completely different.
Yeah, as Stephanie's geraniums that she talked about, that's a perfect example also of an interspecific variety. So for the gardeners out there, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, or you can actually step in, but it is essentially a cross between an ivy leaf type geranium and a zonal geranium. So it brings the qualities of both of those together and brings other qualities in addition to that heat tolerance that the ivy geraniums didn't have. So that's a good example of an interspecific, two different species that are brought together, crossed to create something even better.
That's exactly it. Yep.
And Marcus, you guys have the new AES winner, the Impatiens Summer Jewel, and that's an interspecific, correct? Yeah, another example. So yeah, we could probably cite examples all day long. And
Sun patience.
yes, yes, exactly. Sun patience. There's another one. And we have an AS winner in that one too. So it's fun to have those relatability. Here's a question. It might be a little bit more for Laura, but maybe anybody else can address this too. But what about aggressive plants? Can you breed in plants to be less aggressive, which I guess we were kind of talking about the compactness. But what about being sterile? Can you take something that maybe has a bad reputation and make it suddenly good because it's sterile or no longer going to be invasive or aggressive?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there's different ways to do this. You can breed in. So if you have a plant that is like a runner, a runner forming plant that spreads underground and pops up, you can maybe cross it with something that is more of a clump forming plant and, develop something that's not going to run like that. But then in terms of sterility, yeah, you can absolutely do that sometimes. There's things that we call ploidy manipulation. And if you change, it's basically the number of chromosomes that are in the plant. And if you tweak that, certain levels of chromosome numbers basically create sterility. So through that ploidy manipulation, we can definitely develop that. We don't very often, or we haven't done anything at Walters where we have gotten anything certified sterile. Certification for sterility requires basically sending plant material to university sites, having very in-depth testing. It's quite expensive, but we do definitely breed for sterility and what we say is low to no seed set. So we look for, in our trials here at Walters, and we do trials regionally throughout the country at various customers, at botanic gardens, at universities, and we look for that quality of low to no seed set. And that's basically our version of a sterile plant.
We do similar things at Doom and Orange, especially with things like lantana, a crop that can do what we call in the industry cycle out, where you have a bloom period and then it'll turn all green, the plant. And then eventually, on some of the breeding that we're looking for, we want to have a second cycle of flowers bloom. But having that low to seed set is really important in a crop like lantana, because otherwise it gets the seed heads or the little bud, at the tips of where all the flowers used to be, and then isn't really all that sightly. From a consumer standpoint, they want it. You guys want to have color, color, color all season long. And so sterility can really help with, or looking for a low seed set can really help with making sure that you extend that bloom season, you have a high level of flower power, and the variety isn't going to magically set seed elsewhere within your garden.
Another thing that we do that I forgot to mention, so I thought I'd just jump back in, is also just try to use different varieties. So there's an example that popped in my mind just now in ornamental grasses. So there's an ornamental grass called Emperata that has been really popular. It has absolutely gorgeous red coloration, but the problem is that Emperata does spread, and in certain parts of the country, it can be deemed invasive. It's not everywhere. But there are actually many states that we cannot legally ship Imparata into due to restrictions due to its invasiveness. So what we have done is work more with native species of plants and using things that aren't going to be invasive. So instead of working with a lot of Imparatas, we work with a lot of panicums and schizochyriums that are native prairie grasses to the United States and that don't have those same invasive qualities. So that's kind of another way to get around or work around invasiveness, is to work with things that by nature aren't going to be invasive, and have more benefits if they've developed as native perennials in the country. They're already going to be oftentimes more useful to the native wildlife because they've, been developed in the same habitat and everything. So that's another way that we get by that.
Major kudos to all the breeders on what you're doing in those lines. So, Oh, I don't think I'm going to have time for any more questions because I want to do a summary, but wow, I had a lot more questions that I didn't get to. We're going to have part two, I think. So let's do a little summary here. We have five panelists. Let's let each one of you just kind of give a little tidbit or a summary, or a gardening tip about new varieties. You can use that famous athletic wear and say just do it. I did, I guess. But why don't you guys just give your closing comments, because you're the experts and we love to hear your tips.
I can start here. I think it can be daunting with new varieties of where do you get them? When am I going to start seeing them? It takes a few years for things to really pick up in garden centers. So I would say for those of you that are buying at garden centers, don't be afraid to ask your garden center professionals. I see that you don't carry this. Would you mind starting to pick this up? Or can you source this for me? Because oftentimes they'll help you get a hold of a plant. And if you can't get success there, the beauty of seed is that you could buy seed and start it from home if you really want those plants. So you've already done the step by being here today to learn about new varieties. So the next step is how do you get a hold of them?
Excellent.
And I guess I'll step in next to, tag along with what Marcus said. Again, I'm going to keep going back to this. A new variety for all of you listening out there could be something that's 50 years old. And I'll say what Diane said, just do it. You're not going to learn moving forward. There may be failures, which is okay. For me this year, I have a history with sweet peas. I used to work in the ornamental industry for many years, and I love sweet peas. So I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they don't perform that well. There's really not long enough. The cool spring season isn't long enough. But this year is the first year I'm trying them anyway because I love them. It's new to me. One of the varieties I'm growing is called High Scent, which I recall from my sweet pea selling days years ago. Just as it says, it's a very highly scented sweet pea. Well, I want to try it. It's new to me, but it's been around for 40, 50 years. And it may fail, but so far so good. We'll see. So just jump in and do it. It only took $1.99 seed packet. That was it. And a little bit of garden space.
And I'll jump in next. Research. Don't just walk by the seed rack at the local garden center. Look at your seed catalogs from your favorite seed dealers. What are they promoting? Ask questions. And many cooperative extension services have master gardener programs. Ask questions. There'll be a lot of good advice there, especially more tailored to your growing region. And if you're shifting to a brand new variety or trying to change varieties, I don't shift varieties all at once. And this year have changed a couple of varieties. I've still got some of the old one in just in case because I don't know how the new one is going to do. If the new ones work out great, next year I'll plant the whole thing. But this year, on some things, trying to hedge my bets a little bit. But research and ask questions and look and read.
You're running your own trial, right? In your own home garden.
Actually, I do that a lot.
Yeah.
It kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Stephanie or Laura?
Sure, I'll go. I'll just share that, I think I said this in a previous webinar, that I think the thing that's great about new plants is that, especially when it comes to, say, annuals, is you can try it for a year. And if you didn't like it, or if it wasn't really your cup of tea, then that's okay. You try something new, the upcoming spring. But to kind of add along to that, I'll say also that if you don't have a successful year growing something new, give it a second try. Because sometimes it might have been a bad season. We might have had lots of rain this spring, or the breeder might have actually improved that variety and we didn't even know about it. So I always like to say, try something new, but then also give it a second chance. It's kind of like the 3-bite rule. Take 3 bites and then you might find you actually like it. I have young kids at home, so.
I was going to say that's a parenting tip thrown in also. Yeah.
Gardening and parenting tips all in one place.
Great. Okay, Laura, you get almost the last word. I might have the last word.
Yeah. So my advice is just to, just don't be scared of new. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of get stuck with, Well, this is what I've always used. And it's not just for homeowners. Landscapers do the exact same thing. We're constantly trying to get landscapers to branch out and, just give something new a try. Like Diane has mentioned, we're not doing this just to have something new. We're doing this because they're better. Um, so yeah, just give it a try. Kind of like with the annuals, if you don't have success the first time, even with a perennial, give it another shot. I mean, I've had things that I've tried 3 or 4 different times until I really found the best spot in my yard where they thrive the most. And that's usually for things once you get into something that's a little bit more finicky in terms of its growth performance. A lot of the things that we're putting out in the market, we're really trying to have things that will perform in lots of different areas. But there's always going to be something that, just maybe isn't quite right where you wanted to put it, but it might work on the other side of your, house where maybe your soil type is a little bit different or something. So, and just have fun with it. Don't let yourself get bogged down. I mean, gardening is supposed to be fun. So it's a way to constantly change up your yard, what you're eating, what you're, cutting, what you're looking at every day. So just have fun with it.
Love it. Great advice. And my last word is that these breeders, as well as dozens others, are members of National Garden Bureau. So we collect all the new varieties and we publish them in December of every year, which is the perfect time to get you all invigorated in planning next year's garden. So that's one of the key places where you can find a lot of different new varieties. Just go to ngb.org, new plants. I notice Gail's been posting a lot of links for the new plants that our presenters have talked about. And then we have a list in our member directory. And then also we've got a shop on members page where you can find a lot of these new varieties. So sorry, that was my last word, just to allow a little extra information on where you can find these new varieties. So with that, I think we're all going to say, go out, plant some new varieties, give it a try, test, retest, try it again, try it in a different place, but it's very fun. You will probably be more successful with these new varieties than the older ones. There's a reason that we're putting all these new things out there. So with that, thank you to our panelists, to everyone out there attending. Thank you for listening. And with that, happy gardening.